Ladies and gentlemen, why am I wearing a tracksuit to review a book by an English professor about Shakespeare? Well, I'm wearing a tracksuit because this book says that the way we do academic education needs to be more like how we train for athletics. The book reminded me of a line from Plutarch: "The mind is not a vessel that needs filling, but a wood that needs igniting." This book is called How to Think Like Shakespeare by Scott Newstok. Newstok's argument is that Shakespeare was not a freak of nature. He was a product of the principles that characterised education in the Renaissance. When you went to grammar school in the 16th century, for the first years you focused on Latin. They then ended up by doing a year of rhetoric. That's the art of public speaking, which was incredibly useful if you were going on to a career in the church or in politics or in the law. And what struck me about Newstok's description was that in those days, it was more about training the mind was more like getting your body into shape. It wasn't an inspirational activity. It was like pumping weights. You'd have certain rituals, and those rituals are systematic, rigorous, and demanding, and yet they yielded results. For example, if you're writing a speech, the first step is invention, then arrangement, then style, then memory, and then delivery. You have to gather all your research together and organise it in a systematic way. Then you've got to break it into small bits and try and rearrange it in a way that makes it most effective. Then you've got to think about your style, and then how you're going to remember it all. And finally, how you're going to deliver it. That's an intellectual pentathlon. 5 different areas where you need to excel. They would do lots of translation. Now, translation of ideas into different languages is an important part of appreciating the power and versatility of language. So you translate a text from Latin into English, and then a few days later you translate it from English back into Latin. That builds your linguistic muscle. And if you were translating poetry, you'd then put it into prose, and then a few days later you'd translate it back from prose into poetry. You'd build your word power by writing a sentence like, "I was delighted to receive your letter." Not 5 times, not 10 times, but 150 times. Very repetitive, like learning to throw the javelin. Now, why might that be useful? Well, the trouble is most of us do things instinctively. If you're a teenager, you might say to your dad, "Please, can I borrow the car?" But the likelihood of him saying yes may be extremely small. But if you've done these exercises from Shakespeare's classroom, you can think, can I phrase it differently? Can I choose my time to ask? And maybe those strategies will have a different outcome. That ability to calculate how your action is going to be understood before you act, that to me is thinking. And also in Shakespeare's classroom, they had debates. You'd try to argue for one particular case, then you'd be required to argue for the other side of the case. That means you're not enslaved to your passions and your prejudices. You have to put your feet into the shoes of people you may hate, and you'll be wiser for it. Also, in the same way as if you were trying to run the 100 metres in 10 seconds, you would watch videos of Usain Bolt or Carl Lewis. They studied the great writers, Ovid, Plautus, Virgil, not only to enjoy the richness of their thought, but also to work out how they could write like these greats. It was a way of absorbing these great figures into their consciousness. Now, there's nothing airy-fairy about this. Parents often think that liberal arts degrees are soft and touchy-feely or lefty. This is about cultivating the highest level of thinking appropriate to a free citizen. Believe you me, training in the sciences is not delivering this, with huge consequences for our politics and our society. Newstok wants us to realise our potential to become part of a tradition of greats, and we do this by emulating Shakespeare. That's why I urge you to read this book.